today. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome to Coffee Conversations. My name is Heidi Ellsworth, and I'm the president of Roofers Coffee Shop. And we are here today with a very amazing panel to talk about Roofing Day. Roofing Day 2022. So thank you all for being here. This is live and it is being recorded. So we want to have all of your questions. What are your questions around Roofing Day that's coming up April 5th and 6th? We are looking forward to finding out more about that today. And we have the folks who know what's going on and what's happening today with us. So let's get started with introductions. First, someone who really doesn't need an introduction, but the Honorable Reid Ribble. Reid, welcome to the show, and can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I'm Reid Ribble. I'm NRCA's CEO, and looking forward to having our conversation this morning. Thanks, Heidi.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Really excited about this. We also have Sherri Miles. Sherri, welcome back to Coffee Conversations. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Absolutely. Good morning. This is Sherri Miles. I'm with JD Miles & Sons Roofing in Chesapeake, Virginia.
Excellent. And I also would like to introduce Deborah Mazol. This is Deb's first time on Coffee Conversations. Welcome, and can you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Heidi. Yep, I'm Deb Mazol. I'm out of the Washington, D.C. office of NRCA. Before this, I spent about a decade on the Hill, and the best part of it was serving Congressman Reid Ribble.
Great. We're going to want to hear more about that. Give us some of the back story. And finally, I would like to introduce Randy Ober, the executive director with SPRI. Randy, welcome. And can you introduce yourself?
Sure, Heidi. First of all, thanks so much for giving me the opportunity to be on with this quite influential group. And I am actually the technical director for SPRI. And if you don't know that, well, it's all right. I could be executive director if you want. But anyway, SPRI is the trade organization that represents manufacturers in the single ply roofing industry. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Randy. You know, I just think of you kind of as executive. So there you go. So again, we are here today to talk about Roofing Day 2022. We want your questions, right? So please be chat. Megan in Ellsworth is in the back. She'll be chatting. We'll be bringing your questions up. This is Q&A. If you want to come on live and ask your question in person, we can do that too. But we're going to really help get the information out. Again, this is going to be recorded. And so we would really love for everyone to share it so we can get this out into the entire industry. So Roofing Day 2022. I have to tell you, this is my favorite day of the year. It really, truly is. The first time, and we're going to really kind of go into this, but just the first time I went, I was scared to death. I had no idea what I was doing, and ended up by the end of the day so full of pride and a little teary that I was a part of it. So we want to share that feeling with all of you in the industry, because it's just a moment that everyone should experience at some point. This year, it's going to be April 5th and 6th, and it'll be at the Grand Hyatt in Washington. You're going to get all the details from Deb in a minute, but let's start out with, where did all this start, Reid? How did Roofing Day even happen?
Well, you know, I served 6 years in Congress immediately before becoming NRCA's CEO. So I left Washington, D.C. on December 30th of 2016. I started at NRCA on January 2nd, 2017. And so, I mean, there was no gap between my time leaving Congress and coming to NRCA. But while I was serving in Congress, I had the opportunity to observe how industries approached members of Congress and which ones were effective, which ones weren't, why were they effective, how did they do it? And so over the 6 years, I kind of became a student of watching it, because I had been so involved with NRCA as a roofing contractor, even served as chairman of the board back in 2005, 2006, that I was intrigued by it. And so, and we had moved, actually, when I was chairman of the board, we had our fall committee meetings that were taking place in Chicago. And I made the suggestion that during the election year that we move our fall committee meetings to Washington, D.C. so we could do some Hill visits with members of Congress. But that's only, maybe 35 or 40 people that were willing to go up to Capitol Hill and talk with members of Congress. It wasn't enough to make any type of big splash. And so as I watched other associations do it, I began to get dismayed at the fact that during my 6 years in Washington, I never had a roofing contractor reach out to me to meet with me in DC. And so I did have some manufacturers reach out to me. The Tile Roof Institute folks came in to see me. The folks at GAF came in to see me. Dick Seaman from Fibertite came in to see me pretty regularly, but for the most part, the roofing industry was absent. So when I came to NRCA, literally within a few weeks of being there, I called Dwayne Musser, who's our Vice President of Legislative Affairs in Washington, and his office is on Capitol Hill near the Senate side. It's where Deb Mazol works and Terry Dorn works. And I said, we need to do something different. And we began talking about a fly-in. And I talked with Dennis Conway, who was our chairman of the board at the time, and said, would you be supportive if we just did this? And I said, do I need permission from anybody to do it? He said, you have it. You just go get it done. And so we went from 0 to running 100 miles an hour to try to pull off roofing day in DC. And here's what's the strategy. This is the strategy that works. When you can get an entire industry in agreement on specific issues, you end up taking the likely no that you're going to hear from a member of Congress. Because what members of Congress hate more than anything is saying no to a constituent. They don't want to tell a voter no. Obviously, they want to get to yes because that makes the voter happy and the voter's more likely to vote for them again. But it is very difficult for a member of Congress to choose sides within an industry when an industry comes in a divided fashion. Now, listen, there are parochial interests, and Randy's well aware of this, that there are things that the single ply roofing manufacturers would view maybe differently than a roofing contractor because of their parochial interest versus the parochial interest of a roofing contractor. And yet on about 90% of the issues out there, we've got full agreement. So what we decided to do was create NRCA's One Voice initiative that pulled manufacturers and distribution into the family, and then allow them to inform our decision-making in Washington, D.C. When I say informed, they now had a seat at the table with the contractors. And we began to talk about the things that we agreed on, because I knew that if we went in agreement where the whole industry agreed for across the entire supply chain, members of Congress are going to be more receptive to doing that. And immediately we began to put wins on the board for the roofing industry. And the strategy worked. And like you, Heidi, I walked into that ballroom on the very first ever roofing day. You had, I don't know, whatever it was, 400 or 500 people from across the entire supply chain. And I mean, it was emotional to see this all come together and to see the strength of what happened. But here's the biggest thing, because you asked me earlier in another conversation we had about the successes of roofing day. I will tell you the biggest success we've had is we've put roofing on the map in the minds of our legislators in Washington. We walk in there, we're all wearing red, everybody knows who we are. And those relationships start to matter, because we went from being completely ignored by Congress and almost actually looked down upon by Congress to me receiving calls from the Speaker of the House at NRCA asking what the roofing industry's position was on this or that. And so it has been profoundly powerful, the single most powerful thing we do in moving the bar in Washington, D.C. And so that's how it got started. We need to have everybody there. There's no reason that we can't have 12 people from every state show up. That would be not 12, 20 people from every state show up. That would put 1,000 people in Washington in April. We need you to come, because when we all get together and we all show up, everybody sees us and they notice us. And we start building those important critical relationships that matter in our effort to have a better run government. So with that, I'll shut up.
It's more important than ever. It's more important than ever that everybody show up with one voice. I just think that, is brilliant as we look at it. And Sherri, I know you've been to, I think, every roofing day, right?
think so.
I think so. I think we've been there together. So Sherri, from a contractor standpoint, with what Reid just said and having gone to all of those, what did it mean to you, and what, what would you say to other contractors?
Yeah, it's I think it's the basic tenet of our civic engagement as well, right? As citizens, that's people are representing us. And so we need to have our voices heard. And there is power in numbers, excuse me. And the relationships that not only you build with the congressmen and senators and their legislative aides who do all the work and know everything, but it's also with other contractors in your state or your district, and it's with manufacturers and distribution, and some really powerful, important, and meaningful relationships are built in those few days. So
Yeah.
it's great to have a common cause, certainly, and it's wonderful to be together. I can remember, Reid, when you were talking, I remember, years and years ago when we would have fall meetings in DC and just kind of skirt around meeting up on the Hill, and what a difference this is from just taking those meetings as NRCA as the board to the entire industry and showing up in force. And the work that the committee does, in the off year or during the year to get ready for this and narrow down what the issues are, constantly taking the pulse of the industry and listening and really honing in on what's important. And they do a great job. The legislative team for NRCA and that Roofing Day committee does a fantastic job of finding the common ground on the issues and finding the bills and finding ways that we can be really effective.
When you said that, I can remember back, like you said, back in the day in those fall meetings. I can remember one time Tom Walker from ABC was walking by. He says, "Yeah, I'm going to a meeting with a congressman up on the Hill." And I was like, wow, you get to do that? That's so cool. And that now it's all of us. Anybody can go and meet with their congressman or the legislative aides, which are just, if not more important, to meet with. And it's just so inclusive of everybody in the roofing industry.
Heidi, I just want to add one thing to what Sherri said there is it's been one of our topics to lobby for has been that in any major infrastructure package that they focus not just on roads and bridges, which is what we call horizontal construction, but vertical construction, buildings, airports, courthouses, colleges and universities. And in the new bipartisan infrastructure package that was passed, there are billions of dollars of vertical construction in that bill. And we can connect and pull that thread right back to Roofing Day. And so this works.
Yeah. Well, and some of the topics we're going to talk about in a minute, I know we've been talking about the Perkins Act for many years, and we're going to talk about that again, but it's been happening and we've seen success for contractors across the country. Before we get, and I want to kind of get to how it's going to all work. We already have some questions coming in. Before we do that, Randy, just the importance from the manufacturers, from SPRI, that one voice of having so many different people go to Roofing Day. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, but I'll first of all say I'm a little different than the other people on this call because everybody's been involved since the very beginning of Roofing Day. And actually, I was what I like to refer to as a Roofing Day virgin last year because it was my first time I ever participated. And it was very interesting, especially since it was all virtual. So I'm really looking forward to doing an in-person version of this and seeing what it's like. But what we found, or what I learned, is the importance of getting the group together, prior to meeting with the congressperson, so that we all know what we're going to say. We actually assigned a topic to each different person, so that when we went in, it wasn't just random, thoughts coming out. But yeah, I mean, we're certainly a SPRI encouraging all the manufacturers to participate this and support the roofing contractors, because obviously, just like Reid said earlier, 90% of all issues we're in total agreement, the roofing contractor base as well as the manufacturer. So we certainly want to provide as much support as possible, and I will be there and no longer a virgin from roofing day. So thank you.
Okay, so that's a good point to everybody out there, Randy. Don't be scared. Your first time, they can hang out with you. It really is. Everybody just works together, as you know, from last year on the virtual. Okay, so there's a lot of questions. We already had one question come through from Wayne Hieronymus. Thank you, Wayne, for being here. He says he's going. And Wayne, we're going to check to make sure you're registered here before the end of this coffee conversation. But he wanted to know, are there going to be in-person meetings? And so Deb, why don't you take us through the event and how it's all going to work?
Thanks, Heidi. And I'm so excited that Roofing Day is back in person this year. I work out of the Washington, D.C. office, and I live on Capitol Hill. So I'm really excited to show everyone the city, especially if you haven't been here and haven't been to a Roofing Day before. Like most cities around the country, D.C. Is starting to open up, and I would say pretty much fully open at this point. There are no vaccine requirements. Those have gone away. And there also are no mask requirements starting next week. So fully open, restaurants, bars, Capitol Hill is slowly opening as well. We've also seen an increase in in-person meetings. I think, like me, I'm excited to see people again. I'm excited to see that Capitol Hill is starting to meet with constituents, and we've made it easier than ever this year by not only having space at the Capitol, but also other association townhomes, the Capitol Hill Club, which is the Republican club on the Hill, as well as the NRCA DC office will be open to accommodate folks that maybe don't want to go through the security of the Hill. Maybe their members could come to them. They can grab a quick bite, network with their colleagues. So I think this program is really going to be good. We've enhanced it, listening to feedback from our committee, as well as folks that have attended last year. There'll be a total of 2 networking receptions, one on the evening of the 5th and one on the evening of the 6th. We'll have a breakfast kickoff with a member of Congress, as well as a member of Congress speaking on the reception on April 5th. We'll do advocacy training, so you know exactly what to say and how to say it. We'll give you a briefing on the issues, so you can be really up to speed on everything that the member of Congress or staff might ask you. In addition to those, which we kind of always do every year, as well as set up your congressional meetings for you. You don't have to worry about looking up who your representative and senators are, trying to figure out all the logistics. We'll do all of that for you. So you'll get a schedule and you just have to show up. We're also adding in a political and economic presentation by Bruce Melman, who's a little famous around DC and has also, I know, spoke to the PIMA group and had a great response on his presentation. So he'll be joining us, as well as a bipartisan congressional chief of staff panel. So we can kind of hear right from staff experts of what to say, what not to say, some of their memorable moments that we can probably get a bit of a laugh at, but also really prepare us to meet with other staff and Congress people. Then we're in the final stages of locking in an official from the Department of Labor, particularly from OSHA's construction unit. So we're hopeful that we can announce that soon. So all different things. We're really excited to bring it back in person. We ask that you register by March 23rd, just to give us a little more cushion with the increased logistics. Some folks have also asked me about the security around the Capitol, whether that's with protests and other security considerations. I live on the Hill, work on the Hill. My son goes to daycare in the Capitol. I feel very safe and feel very confident that we'll have a lot of really good in-person meetings and we'll get everyone to where they need to go.
That is excellent. I mean, that's really exciting. I love that chief of staff panel, because that is a scary thing. You're sitting there and you're thinking, I'm going to say something wrong and I'm going to never be able to come back again, which is not the truth, but that's how you kind of feel. And so to have that tutoring ahead of time is great. It helped me, helps me every year. One of the things, and I just want to note here that the team from National Roofing Partners, Daryl Kratzer is on, and they're all registered, Deb. So if we're going to make sure they're all registered, but there is always a sheet, and we're actually going to show this up on the screen right now. But as Deb said, the Roof Pack and the Government Affairs Committees of NRCA work very hard putting together talking points that bring the whole group together. Maybe Sherri, I know you've sat in those meetings and you mentioned a little bit earlier, but can you kind of share a little bit how they go about choosing the topics and from a contractor's viewpoint? Oh, you're on mute, Sherri.
Sorry, my office phone was ringing earlier. We look at all of the issues that really affect currently the industry as a whole. And there is some very lively debate as to what kind of gets priority most years. And, I think the theme for the past few years has been workforce development and where are we going to get the next generation of workers. And we want to make sure this industry thrives. I mean, that's what it's all about. We want to succeed. We want everyone to succeed. How are we going to do that? And kind of weave in, political climate and what could possibly get through instead of just throwing something out there that's, completely untenable. So it's very, like I said, it's a lively debate, it's very robust. And if you go back through the years, we have talked a lot about the issues that we are talking about today still. And hopefully, fingers crossed, the DC team again kind of tees us up for success. Tease us up for things that have traction, have movement, and that are, doesn't matter what political color you are, this is good for everyone. This is good for business owners. This is good for people who work in our businesses. This is good for owners. This is going to make our country stronger and better moving forward through and with our industry. So I really hats off to that committee that works every year so very hard in winnowing out what topics and specific bills even we can really attach ourselves to and tee us up for success.
And, I think we need to also mention within there, and then we're going to get to the topics, I promise, but we need to mention in there that just the amazing team we have with Roof Pack in DC led by Dwayne. And they really, Deb and Terry and Dwayne, and they work year round with NRCA contractors, board of directors, everyone to really make sure that this doesn't end just on roofing day. So Reid, talk just a little bit about that, about the importance of Roof Pack.
Yeah, and I want to kind of make the distinction here because we have 3 different committees that work in our government affairs space. We've got a roofing day committee. That task force works specifically, as Sherri said, they debate all the potential issues. They kind of throw a bunch of things up on the wall, and during the course of discussion, they'll narrow this down to our top 3. We only get 25 minutes in a meeting, sometimes only 15. So you want to go in with your biggest stuff and go there. So we've got a roofing day task force. Second thing, we've got a government affairs committee. When Washington, DC is working on things, we will be sending information to the government affairs committee to get their feedback to inform staff on whether we should be opposing or supporting these various things. So everything is driven by our members. And then the third committee that you mentioned is Roof Pack. And Roof Pack deals with our political activity with raising the necessary funds to help candidates that are pro-business and would be interested in supporting good government. We want to help those candidates get elected or reelected. And that's a very powerful tool in helping us get the best possible government we possibly can. And so we're a player in all 3 of those spaces. and we have a lot of volunteers working on it. And Terry Dorn, she heads up our political action work. Terry worked in my office, was my deputy chief of staff. Deb was my legislative director, and so she handles all the Roofing Day advocacy things. What are the issues we're going to do? And she writes up these beautiful documents that you have, and she makes sure that the committee's informed on those types of things. Dwayne Musser is our vice president, who oversees the entire operation, and his tentacles are on top of everything. And he kind of holds the ship together and moves it in the right direction. And then we've got about 100 volunteers actively working across the industry to do that. And so those folks are absolutely essential, because this is not a staff-driven event. This is a member-driven event. And the interesting thing about Roofing Day, when we first set this up, is the very first thing we did, which is unusual for NRCA. We said this is open to anybody. You do not have to be a member of NRCA to attend it. This is an industry-wide event. And we have our local affiliates sponsor the event, our state affiliates sponsor the event, our manufacturing affiliates like SPRI, where Randy is, they sponsor the event. And we put their names on our handouts to members of Congress, because they see all these associations all listed in alphabetical order, everyone's logo the same size. So nobody's called out as being special. It's all of us moving together to get this work done. It's really something to see and participate in. And I want to just add one thing, and then maybe Deb will add to this a bit later in the conversation. If you have a meeting with congressional staff, often I'll hear feedback that, well, I didn't get to meet the congressman, or I didn't get to meet the senator. I will tell you, as that guy, as the person that was a congressman, when I go in to meet with my congressman, I actually almost prefer to meet with staff, because at the end of the day, anything they give me, I'm going to call Deb Mazol into my office and say, here, we need to work on this. And she takes it from there. And so we're almost better off, quite frankly, if we want to get things done, getting right to the workhorses in those congressional offices. That's the chief of staff, the legislative director, and legislative assistants, who are assigned responsibility for our issues.
Yeah, and brilliant. Washington, D.C. is run by all these young, passionate staffers that you see all over. So, Deb, why don't you, I think this is really important. Do you mind, please take us through the issues that have been selected by all of those volunteers and that lively debate, and just let everyone know what we're going to be talking about when we're there.
Thanks, Heidi. Yep. This year, as no surprise, what we heard most about was the lack of ability to get a trained workforce. And we know that that is also hindering our supply chain crisis, getting truckers to move our products, getting the raw materials, everything kind of focused on workforce. And we decided that was going to be our one overarching message for this year. With that, we have kind of 3 points that we feel would be beneficial in addressing those challenges in the workforce and supply chain. The first is the Perkins Career and Technical Education Grants. We do that since I've been here the past 2 years. We've done it each year, and it's so important. The funding hasn't kept up with inflation, and it certainly hasn't kept up with four-year university federal funding. We have been successful since we've added this as a Roofing Day issue in getting increases. The most recent bills in Congress, one is passed the House and the other is in draft form in the Senate, provided an additional $50 million for this program over the previous year. So we want to make sure we continue to put that pressure on, especially as they're going through in Congress right now. And I think we'll continue to go through it this spring in crafting an overall funding bill for the next fiscal year. The second is on a less used, but just as important program called the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. What this legislation did is provided funding to state and local boards to better align and remove burdensome regulations and paperwork to match job seekers with willing employers. and provide funding for that. So training based on a funding formula in your state. And a lot of people just don't know about the boards. Some states are easier to navigate than others. And so right now, the committees in Congress, the Senate Help Committee and the House Ed and Labor Committee have asked for feedback on how we can make this program work better for employers like roofing contractors and manufacturers. So we've been working with them since last April to craft a way that's best for our members, including increased awareness and of course, increased funding. The third kind of solution to the problem of workforce training, workforce development and supply chain crisis is immigration, of course. Immigration in an election year is particularly difficult, but we have to keep push. We really have to keep it up. Every year gets more difficult with demographic changes, as well as cultural changes. We need to make sure people are proud of being a roofing contractor, proud of working with their hands, because if we don't have a roof over our heads, we really don't have anything. And so two bills that we're looking at, one is a visa program under the Workforce for an Expanding Economy Act, and the bill number is up there if you want to take a closer look, but essentially it's a market-oriented system. So you get more visas in times of when you need them based on the economy and less when you don't. The second one is providing legal status for temporary protected status and DACA program participants. And so we'll continue the fight with that. The TPS and DACA bill is HR 6. It has passed the House, but it has kind of languished in the Senate. And that's a good overview. Happy to answer any questions, or if Randy or Sherri or anyone want to talk about the importance of those. I see Reid's unmuted.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention the temporary protected status because a lot of members aren't necessarily going to know who those people are. And so, Deb, if you wouldn't mind just taking a second and explaining how workers got into the country through this temporary status visa and why they're still here.
Yep. So a lot of folks came over on a temporary protected status from countries that primarily have been met with natural disasters. So Haiti comes to mind, for example. Many other countries in Latin America, whether it's natural disaster or economic disaster, they come here under a protected status so that they can live and work, with the understanding that someday they'll either be legalized to stay or they'll be sent back if conditions improve in their country. The problem becomes is a lot of these folks have been here for 10 years. They've had children here. They've put roots down. And so to send them back now would be absolutely insane. And so we're fighting to let those people come here, stay, contribute to their communities, keep their families together. And what has been happening currently from an administrative perspective versus legislative, they've allowed folks to stay here again, temporarily, putting them in this constant cycle of unknowing what might happen next. So it's incredibly important to have legislation to codify that these members can stay here.
So Randy, can you, on the issues like we talked about earlier, this affects manufacturers, contractors across the board. And these are pretty important for what's happening right now with supply chain and labor shortages.
Yeah, and I'll just make a comment on that Perkins Act. I know we did that last year with one of the topics, and one of the things that blew my mind away was that the small percentage of the total budget for these education grants that actually go to technical training. I think it was in the single digits. It's just amazing to me. And I talk to kids. I mean, my youngest kid is a college senior, and some of his friends, I talk to them. It's like, you know what, you don't have to go to college. And several of his friends, they became linemen and all this sorts of things. It's amazing the opportunities that there are in the technical and versus a four-year college degree. So I think that that's extremely important. And the manufacturers have some of the different concerns than what the contractors do, and it's mostly to do with the supply chain. Obviously, that's all we hear about. And some of that has to do with labor. Of course, some of it has to do with COVID. And so there's a combination of things that influence the manufacturer's concerns and what is contributing to the problems with the supply chain. So I just think this gives us all this gives us the opportunity to get together and work toward solutions for these issues that Deb just described.
Yeah, and if anyone out there has questions on these issues, please type them in. Leanne from Slattery, hello Leanne, from ATAS said they're going to be there. They're looking forward to participating and excited to be back in person this year. So we'll see you there, Leanne. But if you have questions about these topics or just let us know that you're going, that's great. Sherri, your view on what we're going to be talking about on the Hill.
Well, I can give some very personal stories about how we have been the beneficiary of Perkins Act money, because it funnels through our state in Virginia and then through our local workforce council. And that's how we get our guys pro certified. So we have been able to, I can give, concrete examples of how we have scaled up our current workforce and been able to do this with many different companies, roofing companies in the state, and made a better workforce. It's actionable, it's real, it's happening. And it's interesting because at the state level, we talk about how we make relationships, but at the state level, we also do some lobby day. And every one of the people that I met with asked me, how much do you need? How much do we need to ask for Perkins spending? And so it all ties in together. They look to us for knowledge and information and what's happening in the real world, and how they can help us best. So it all is connected. And like I said, some real life examples of how important this legislation is and these topics are to the contractors.
When I kind of look at this, I think one of the questions I have too on Reid is exactly what Sherri's saying. Like Virginia, she's working through her state. It's all working. But are there any top priority states or districts? I mean, I know we want 20 from every state, so we're going to get that, or we're going to work at it. But are there any that you have, or maybe Deb, you can answer this, any states that really are critical right now to be showing up?
Deb, I think it'd be helpful maybe if we would put something out possibly about where we need people to come from, in part because let's say the chairman of a particular committee that oversees the workforce innovation work, or the small business committee, people that would be on judiciary or one of the committees that has responsibility for immigration reform. It'd be nice to identify those committee members and what district they're in, and then see if we can target making sure we've got representatives from those particular congressional districts, that are actually touching on those members of Congress who have jurisdictional authority to advance that type of legislation. Is that a good idea, Deb?
Yeah, that's great, Reid. And, obviously we want people from every state, and I particularly like all the state competitions. So I believe Florida has led us in the past few years, with California, Texas, and Colorado actually following right after. But Reid, you're exactly right. So the House Ed and Labor Committee is the House committee that would handle the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. For Perkins, that's an appropriations function. So on the House and Senate side, it's the Appropriations Committee. On the Senate side, for the labor piece, it's called the Senate Health Committee, Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions. So that's kind of the Senate counterpart of the House Ed and Labor Committee. And then for immigration, it's the Senate and House Judiciary Committees. So looking at the chair, people from North Carolina, Ohio, New York, Illinois, those are going to be important. But if everyone, goes and looks up their members, and I can put out a list as well, see if they're on the committee, see if you have a relationship with them. Those are going to be incredibly important to us. Connecticut is the other, appropriations, as well as Alabama. That being said, once we have a few more people registered, we look at what states are not represented, and we'll start calling those members personally and say, please, we need more people from Nebraska or Arizona or Minnesota. We also, once we have our congressional speakers locked in, and we hope to have those soon, we try to make sure we have a lot of people from their state or district so they can see that speaking to our group was not only beneficial, but they really got to connect with as many constituents as possible since they made time for us. One thing I wanted to add when I was thinking about when Heidi said, oh, you know, it's kind of intimidating to go see your member of Congress. I worked on the Hill as a staffer for a really long time, and I'm particularly proud now to work on Roofing Day because I've heard nothing but incredible feedback from staff and members that not only were our members knowledgeable, but they were professional, they were on time, they provided personal anecdotes that really allowed our issues to stick in their mind more so than if I would just go in and meet with them. So no one ever be embarrassed or shy or scared. They're, as we can see, Reid Ribble, he's a congressman that's just like us. And I've just been really proud of our group when they hit the Hill, and we are also one of the largest fly-ins that DC sees. And on average, it's about 150 people for different fly-ins, even associations that are much larger than us. And so anything we can do to get those numbers up, it really does make a difference in terms of quantity, but we also have that quality.
Yeah, well, you're making me think, and Daryl says that he loves the competition with the states and that Texas is going to rise up this year. So if we need Texas, they're on it. They're bringing it up. I think it says level up 2022. So, but you know, you kind of made me think about that too, Deb, because we're registered, we're ready to go, and I have to admit, Oregon has not had the largest turnout on our side. So I need to make some phone calls and personally invite people, my friends in Oregon. I'm sure Lisa Sprick will be there. So I know we've got us. And really kind of, if you're thinking about this, if you're already registered, but reach out to other contractors, manufacturers, whoever it is in your state, and invite them. Sometimes people just need to be invited. They may not even know about it. Share this coffee conversation so they can see what the topics are. It's just so, it's so important. And we have midterms coming up in November. And so what we're doing coming in to DC is going to make some big differences. So Reid, maybe just a little bit on how this influences and helps us being in those offices going into midterms.
Yeah, well, anytime you go into an election year, you've got some advantages because members of Congress are anxious to meet with voters. They're really anxious to, particularly voters that are professionals. You know, they know that they're not going to be attacked by us, that when we come in, we're going to be coming in, we're going to be prepared, as Deb said, we're going to do the right types of things and going to be a professional atmosphere. And so members of Congress are really very excited to have constituents, particularly in their offices. And so it's a perfect time. And I often use this line that as we get closer to that election, members become a bit more fearful. And that's an emotion that can be exploited for the benefit of the industry, because they want to get all those people sitting in front of them to like them enough that they might consider voting for them in the fall. And so we need to take advantage of that fear going into, not to threaten them in any way, but to show them that we're interested in engaging with them in their offices. And they will view that as a real net positive, quite frankly. And so I think it's really important that we show up and take advantage of the fact that there's a midterm here. And we've got an opportunity right now to try to move the needle a bit. And it's up to us to take advantage of it. But this could be huge. The little bit of money that a member or that a member of NRCA or a listener would spend to come and do this, the potential gains are enormous. And so people like to complain about government, right? They like to be cynical of Congress, and they like to complain that nothing ever happens. Well, I can tell you the fastest way to get things to happen is to get your member of Congress's attention. And one of the initiatives that we started after Roofing Day a few years ago was starting to get members of Congress to come and visit our members at their offices or at their place of businesses. Come and do a safety meeting with a roofing contractor. And the members that have invited members of Congress to come to their places of business, whether it's a manufacturer that is in Randy's organization or a contractor that's in NRCA, the response has been overwhelmingly positive. And that relationship building really matters. And so we're all about taking this to the next level.
Yeah. That is great. So Sherri, just kind of talk a little bit about that again too, and how important it is also to be able to talk about these issues. I mean, when I think about the immigration, about the Perkins Act, I mean, all of these things are coming back to benefit our industry.
They are. And, I'll speak to the intimidating piece of this as well, because it is intimidating to go through the process to get into the Capitol Hill offices. But NRCA does a great job of holding your hand, really preparing you for, to stick to the talking points, because sometimes either in your group or with the aides, they can go off topic, but to, bring it back to these only.
Yeah.
Also the relationships that you make with your people who are representing you on the Hill. And so while it is intimidating, I have found that whether it's the lowest person in the office aide or the senator themselves, they're people and they're lovely, and they really are working hard to do the best job they can do. They really are. And they have the best interest of their constituents at heart. They really do. I think that between the media and whatever, it's become sensationalized of, such polarization, but the vast majority of people who are working in government are servants, and they have servants' hearts. So.
And Heidi, can I just tell a little story after that? So we had the opportunity to meet with our Representative Scott Perry last year. And so I grew up in his area, and I was reading through his bio, and it said there that he started working at 13 years old. And he was working at Ashcombe Farms, which is a local farm and farmers market. And I opened up by telling the story that when I was about the same age, my mom used to pile us kids into the car, drive to Ashcombe Farms, and pick strawberries because it was cheaper to pick them yourself than to buy them pre-picked. So I apologize to Scott for taking some of his livelihood away when he was that young. So he thought that was hilarious. So they are just like we are. They're just very easy to talk to. So,
when we walked into, and so you're in this new city, we're in Deb City, right? And it's a little intimidating coming from Sisters, Oregon. And you walk into our congressman, and there's a poster of Sisters, Oregon, and there's the Oregon Ducks and the Beavers. And, it's like you almost walk back into your state when you walk in to see them. And it all of a sudden you're like, wow. And I think it's really true that you see their real people and real issues that are going on. But what I really loved, Randy, what you just said too, is you had kind of done some research ahead of time on your congressman and what he was doing. Deb, maybe talk a little bit about what can people be doing right now to prepare for Roofing Day, so that when we do go in there, we're giving it our best.
Yeah, definitely. I would encourage everyone to sign up first and foremost. We have about 80 registrants to date. So there's a lot of folks out there that I know are going to make it and are excited to come, but just haven't realized April is coming up so fast. I feel like, February has just flown by, and it's a short month. So March starts next week. So please just sign up, and that starts the process of, kind of preparing, right? So we're working to get our advocacy issues up that Heidi just shown. It was fresh off the presses. So we're getting those up on our website now. If you visit our website, you'll find, and it's nrca.net/roofing day. You can register there. You can see tips for congressional meetings, you can see on the tips of congressional meetings, it says, what to do a week before, what to do the day before in some of the logistical plannings. And then you can see our tentative itinerary if you want to look up some of the speakers that we're going to have and think about questions you might want to ask them to really fulfill that part of the program in the morning. Then, go online and look up your representative or senator and do what Randy did, look at their bios, look at their committees, and find just a little nugget of a way you can connect to them personally, whether it's, for me, Representative Schrader, it was a equine veterinarian. Well, I rode horses growing up, and that's a really quick way to have them remember you. It takes half a second, and then you can get into the issues that you're talking about. It's always good for members and staff to hear, where you're from. Why are you here? How did you get involved? How many employers you have? If you're a manufacturer with multiple locations, feel free to mention that. That kind of shocks people when you say, well, I have a small plant with 100 employees or 10 employees in, Jackson, Mississippi, but we have 7 locations. Oh, wow. Okay. So they kind of see that multiplier effect. Make your hotel reservations, get in on that block rate. We're going to be at the Grand Hyatt, Washington. It's near the White House, near one of the only chain restaurants in DC, the Cheesecake Factory, right across the street. So if that entices you, that's there as well. Happy to give personal food or tour recommendations. I've put together a chart of everything that's kind of open and the hours and how that's all working. And then, book your flight. A lot of flights right now, a lot of airlines have, flexible cancellation policies. We'd hate for you to cancel, but we'd love for you to get that flight locked in. And also a lot of people probably have credits saved up from canceled travel from the past 2 years. So anything we can do, I can do, our team in DC can do to help get you registered. Happy to do it. My email is dmazol@nrca.net. I can put it in the chat, but I think that would be a good start, and then kind of researching what you want to focus on and how it applies to your business.
Hey, Deb, in the past, we've actually put in the packet some restaurant recommendations. Are we planning on doing that this year as well?
I would love to. As I'm a foodie, I have a spreadsheet of these already prepared. And so I'm happy to put those. Happy to put those in there. DC has a constantly changing restaurant scene, and I'll put something in there, some historical, some kind of new trendy things, and some steakhouses for our meat lovers out there.
Well, and one of the things too, I think we need to really encourage everyone. It's not just you, right? It's your team. And you're the workers who are on your crews, who are in your offices. I can say from Roofers Coffee Shop, James Ellsworth is going, and Karen Edwards and myself, we will all be there representing Oregon and Pennsylvania. And I think it's important that it's a team going there, but even more important are the people who are working in the field. And so maybe just real quick, talk about that, Sherri. How important is to have them represented and for the Congress folks to see us that way?
Yeah, well, and it's both sides, right? It also elevates and makes your team member feel like, wow, I'm living into this. I'm a part of something bigger than just working here at this company. So I know last year when we had the virtual capabilities, a lot of my team was able to join in and just to get their feet wet and see what it was all about. And several have come to me and said, hey, is this, what are the dates? Again, a little more intimidating, perhaps to people in the field, but if you're there with them, and can help them understand how important it is, I think it's a great idea and great cause.
Yeah. Charles Antis couldn't be here today, but he tells a story about Jesus going to DC that is just awesome. So I'm sure it's on tape somewhere because he's told it many times. But Reid, I know that you are constantly asking contractors to bring crew members. How important is that from who we're talking to?
Oh, I can tell you it's really important. there's a 65% chance in this country that if a roofing crew shows up at your home or at your place of business, that you're going to be looking at the face of an immigrant worker. And, immigration reform has been one of our real driving messages when we've gone to Congress. And I call it the killing the frog syndrome. When you were in high school or middle school, I guess it was, and you had to dissect that frog, you sure were hoping that you had a dead one and not one that had a beating heart, because you'd have to kill it. And the fact of the matter is nobody wants to do that. And nobody wants to look at the face of that immigrant sitting in their office and say that you have no interest in doing some type of legal immigration reform. And they need to have these people personalized. We need to put a name on that immigrant face. We need to put a heart and spirit to it. And those members of Congress need to see this man or woman sitting in front of them and recognize the professional work that they do every day, how important it is to our nation's economy and style of living that we have. And for that worker to tell that member of Congress, I put the roof on 200 homes last year, and I'm keeping them, as Charles Antis would say, safe and dry because of the skills that I bring to the table. And but there's a reason we need pragmatic, thoughtful, legal immigration reform so that we've got a legal workforce in this country that will invest in this country, that will buy homes and goods and services in this country, that will put roots in this country. There's 1.4 jobs for every unemployed American right now.
Jeez.
And so, I mean, we've got a 40% shortfall. We've got 40% fewer workers even available than we have got jobs available. And we've got to begin to shift the paradigm and get away from this nonsense that we're not a country made up of immigrants, because we are.
Exactly. That is a great place to leave it. I hope that inspired everybody out there to get registered, bring your teams and join it. Deb just put her information into the chat. You can also find all this information on Roofers Coffee Shop, on the Roof Pack, and also the NRCA directories. So if you're like, I don't know where to go, but really, if you just Google Roofing Day 2022, it comes right up. So we want to get as many people out there. Please share this. Please share this. Please invite people in your area, in your state. Try to win that, competition against Texas and Florida. See what you can do. I think I'll need a couple more years for Oregon to be in that competition, but we'll work on it from here. So I just want to thank everyone. Randy, Reid, Sherri, Deb, thank you so much for all your wisdom today and for what you do to make this happen, all the behind the scenes work, because I know it takes huge amounts of work to pull all this together. Okay, and I would like to thank all of you for being here today. Our next coffee conversation is in 2 weeks, and we have our friends from National Roofing Partners and United Rentals who are going to be on with us and talking about, this is a really interesting topic. I was like, they're going to be talking about training for equipment certification, regulations that are coming out, being aware of what you need to do for your employees so that you don't get caught in trouble. And there are a lot of new regulations, actually not that new, but they have not been talked about. So we're going to be doing that in 2 weeks from now. We also really want to make sure everybody registers by March 23rd. So spread the word and let's all meet up together and see each other in Washington, D.C. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for being a part of this Coffee Conversations, and thank you for this great panel. Have a wonderful day.